In this video, we will cover the creation of a new buyout package and the importing of items from an estimate. A buyout package represents all of the items in an estimate that we intend to issue purchase orders for or issue subcontracts for. In terms of the 1.0 version of buyout, this would be the equivalent of a work file. So to create a new buyout package, simply click on the new icon on the toolbar. We then provide a unique name for the buyout package. Typically this will likely be the project name or project number and name associated with the estimate or the project. So we'll give it a name. Notice that you can create a folder structure. So you can create folders and organize your buyout packages under those folders. There is a separate utility under the file menu to manage buyout buyout packages, so that you can move buyout packages to other folders when necessary. So if you wanted to have folders designated for archival purposes or separate them by year or what have you, there's a level of organization you can apply to this. So otherwise, if we just simply create the buyout package here, it's just in the root folder for the buyout database. So we'll click OK and wait for the buyout package window to come up. Okay, so now that the buyout package window is displayed, we'll see that a couple of things. First of all, there's a tab strip across the top here, and these in the future will probably be rendered to look more like tabs like you're accustomed to. But this allows us to have multiple buyout packages open at one time. So if there was more than one package open, we would just see additional tabs across the top here. Going down from there, we see the navigation bar. So this basically is giving us a visual representation sort of what the overall process is that we're trying to accomplish. Really with the three options in the middle being kind of the main elements, that being we're going to take the items from the estimate and group them into logical groupings that would be representative of the purchase orders and subcontracts that we're going to issue. We're going to select vendors, get price quotes, and compare, and ultimately select a vendor for each one of those groupings of items. And once vendors have been selected, we're going to complete the process by committing those quotes, by issuing the documents and sending the commitments over to the accounting side. And then ultimately we're going to review the progress throughout the whole process to make sure that we have accounted for everything and where we can see the state that everything is in at any point. So again, the workflow navigation bar allows us to kind of visually see those steps, and as you can see, as you hover over each one of these buttons, it kind of tells you what the objective of that step is as well, with the orange one always representing the step that we're currently on. So on the first step, we have the buyout package name, which we established earlier. We also have the options here to import an estimate from Sage Estimating, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So when I click that button, it first asks me to identify the estimate to be imported. And to identify that, we'll click the ellipsis button. And here we see a list of the available estimates from the Sage Estimating database. This user interface is built to look and work very much like the same window in Sage Estimating, where you would be selecting the estimate that you want to open. So at the bottom we see the whole estimate catalog with all of its branches and the estimates that are within each branch. At the top we see the most recently used estimates. This is most recently used in Sage Estimating based on the current user ID. So this is going to apply really more where the person operating buyout might have been in Sage Estimating previously and had the estimate open, and then in which case they would see that estimate under most recent estimates. Also within this window we can use the search function, which works a little bit differently than the search function in Sage Estimating. But just as an example, let's type in the word cross, and we'll see that what it does is it identified that there are 4 entries that match that word, and it automatically jumped to the first match. And if I click the down arrow, it jumps me to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So that's kind of how that search function works. It's just doing a full text search of any nodes in the tree that match that text. And then we can clear that search just by clicking the X, and then it goes back to displaying like it normally would. So I could, for example, identify Mackenzie Oaks, and it finds it right there. I click that. Drops in the job number automatically based on the cover page information from the estimate. That can be overridden just by typing the job number or selecting it from the list. In this case, the list is coming from Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate. If we were plugged into Sage 100, of course, this list would be coming from Sage 100. So I could select a different job here if I wanted to, if that made sense. It's always going to show the description of the job based on whatever is in the accounting side. Also, the item types that are shown here are defaulting to what was shown in the buyout options window earlier. But I could override that on a per buyout package basis and elect to import additional item types if I wanted to use those in this buyout package. Otherwise, it's only going to import the types that I identified here. So I'll click on import, and at this point it queries the Sage Estimating database and imports all of the items from the estimate. Based on the settings that we discussed in an earlier video, it would also potentially create quote groups for me automatically as well, based on the settings that I set, and also potentially create quotes if I have stored pricing for any of those items, and retain pricing that might have already been in the estimate. So all of those things happen automatically by importing the estimate. And we'll take a look at the results of that in the next video when we talk about grouping items. Also on the buyout package step, we can select contacts. So your company basically is going to be useful when generating documents like a request for a quote or purchase order, because that's what's going to fill in for the company that's sending the request for a quote or the purchase order. So I can select the company. These company names come out of the Sage Estimating address book, and I can select the appropriate address to use for that and so forth. And the other contacts as well are contacts that can be used in the heading of those documents. Again, those would all be selected from the Sage Estimating address book. Options. So we have some fields to identify the site address for the project. Again, information that can appear in the headings of documents or on reports. Some defaults as far as the number of days that quotes are due back from vendors. Again, that information can appear on the top of like a request for a quote document, the default time and so forth. Important to note this effective date as well. So if we do have pricing that has been stored in buyout, buyout does allow you to store the pricing with an effective date and an expiration date, because obviously vendor pricing can change over time. And so you might have a current price list from the vendor, but also you might be aware of a pricing change that's coming up, which you might already have pricing for. So when buyout is determining which price to apply, it will use the date that you specify here in conjunction with those effective dates and expiration dates for the pricing in order to determine which price applies at that particular point in time. That's going to default to today's date. You can certainly override that. So if you knew, for example, that you're working on this today, but you're not going to be writing purchase orders until next week or next month even, set it to the date that you intend on actually doing your purchasing, and that will help to make sure that you're using the correct pricing based on that date. Rounding settings are what you would expect as far as how those settings have been used in the legacy product and estimating for rounding quantities on reports and whatnot. And then the default tax group. So that again is pulling from the accounting system, and that would be used to pre-fill the tax group associated with individual buyout groups or quote groups. So that is everything on the buyout step or buyout package step. At this point we have a buyout package established. So just a couple of really quick things to cover before we end this video and move on then to the group items video. The way that we close out of this buyout package is simply go up to the file menu and click close buyout package, and that closes it. To get back into that buyout package, we click on open, and again we would see on the left the folder structure if you've established one, and then select the buyout package that we want to open, click open, and then that gets redisplayed. Okay, so that is everything for this video, and again the next video that we will embark on would be talking about how to group items into quote groups.